December 27, 1941, 6:15 a.m., off the coast of Vagsøy, Norway. As the British landing craft approached the German-occupied port, a sound echoed across the frigid water that the Wehrmacht had never heard in combat before. Bagpipes. Lieutenant Colonel Jack Churchill stood at the bow of the landing craft, facing the enemy shore, playing the March of the Cameron Men at full volume while German machine guns opened fire on the approaching commandos. The moment the ramp dropped, Churchill leaped onto Norwegian soil, hurled a grenade at the nearest German position, then drew a full Scottish broadsword from his belt and charged screaming into the enemy fortifications. His men followed, inspired by a commanding officer, so completely insane that the Germans literally didn't know how to react. By the time Operation Archery ended 2 hours later, the German garrison had surrendered. Churchill had personally captured dozens of prisoners, not with a rifle, but with a medieval sword and the sheer force of his personality. His motto, "Any officer who goes into action without his sword is improperly dressed." This is a true story of Mad Jack Churchill, the British Commando who fought World War II like it was 100 Years' War and somehow survived. Before we reveal how a man with a longbow outfought soldiers with machine guns, hit that subscribe button and smash that like. We're bringing you the most unbelievable true stories from military history. Stories so insane they couldn't be fiction because nobody would believe them. Now, back to the most eccentric, courageous, and completely bonkers officer in the British Army. John Malcolm Thorpe Fleming Churchill was born September 16, 1906, in Colombo, British Ceylon, now Sri Lanka. His father, Alec Fleming Churchill, was a district engineer in the Ceylon Civil Service. In 1910, the family relocated to British Hong Kong when Alec was appointed Director of Public Works. Young Jack loved adventure. He explored Hong Kong's rural areas, developed a passion for motorcycles, and cultivated interests that would define his entire life: archery, bagpipes, and swordsmanship. In 1926, Churchill graduated from the Royal Military Academy, Sandhurst, and was commissioned into the 2nd Battalion, Manchester Regiment. He was posted to Burma, where his adventurous spirit found an outlet. He learned to play the bagpipes under the tutorship of the pipe major of the Cameron Highlanders. He became so proficient that he'd later compete in, and nearly win, major piping competitions. In 1930, Churchill drove a Zenith motorcycle 1,500 miles across the Indian subcontinent from Rangoon to Pune to attend a signals course. This was before there were proper roads. He crashed into a water buffalo along the way, but made it in time to participate in the Burma Rebellion of 1930 to 1932. But peacetime military life bored him. In 1936, at age 30, Churchill resigned his commission and moved to Nairobi, Kenya, where he worked briefly as a newspaper editor and, bizarrely, a male model. His archery and bagpipe skills landed him roles in films. He appeared playing bagpipes in the 1924 silent film, The Thief of Baghdad, starring Douglas Fairbanks. In 1938, he had roles in The Drum and A Yank at Oxford. In 1938, Churchill competed in a military piping competition at Aldershot Tattoo and took 2nd place, causing a minor scandal because an Englishman had beaten numerous Scottish competitors. In 1939, he represented Great Britain at the World Archery Championships in Oslo, Norway. He was an exceptional archer, capable of hitting targets at distances that would prove lethal in combat. Then Germany invaded Poland on September 1st, 1939. World War II had begun. Churchill immediately rejoined the Manchester Regiment. By May 1940, he was in France as part of the British Expeditionary Force facing the German Blitzkrieg. Most British officers carried service revolvers. Some carried rifles. Churchill carried a longbow. As the BF retreated toward Dunkirk, Churchill's unit conducted delaying actions against advancing German forces. During one engagement near Lepinette, Churchill used his longbow to deadly effect. A German patrol approached his position. At approximately 200 yards, Churchill drew his bow and fired a barbed arrow. The arrow struck the German sergeant directly through the chest, killing him instantly. It remains the last confirmed longbow kill in the history of warfare. When his company was surrounded and nearly captured at Lepinette, Churchill killed the lead German soldier with his longbow, then used 2 machine guns to provide covering fire until ammunition ran out. Though shot in the left shoulder, he led the survivors through German lines at night and brought them to safety. For his actions, Churchill was awarded the Military Cross. But this was just the beginning. In 1941, Churchill volunteered for the newly formed Commandos, elite British Special Forces units designed to conduct raids on German-occupied territory. The Commandos attracted the toughest, most aggressive, and most unconventional soldiers in the British Army. Churchill was all 3. He was assigned to No. 3 Commando and quickly became second in command. His reputation for eccentricity was already established. He regularly practiced his bagpipes at 3 a.m., waking his entire unit. During one military parade, he showed up carrying an umbrella. When asked why, he replied, "Because it's raining, sir." His commanding officers tolerated his behavior because Churchill was also exceptionally effective in combat. On December 27, 1941, Operation Archery launched against a German garrison at Vågsøy, Norway. The mission: destroy German positions, capture prisoners, and demonstrate British offensive capability. Churchill was second in command of No. 3 Commando for the assault. As the landing craft approached shore at 6:15 a.m., Churchill stood at the bow playing the March of the Cameron Men on his bagpipes. German troops on shore initially thought the sound was some kind of alarm or signal they didn't recognize. The moment the landing craft beached, Churchill leaped off, threw a grenade at the nearest enemy position, drew his Scottish broadsword, and charged screaming toward German fortifications. His men, inspired and probably terrified by their commanding officer's apparent insanity, followed with equal fury. The Germans had never encountered anything like this. Most Allied soldiers approached combat cautiously, using cover and fire and maneuver tactics. Churchill approached combat like a medieval berserker, screaming and waving a sword while bagpipes wailed behind him. The psychological effect was devastating. German troops later reported that they thought the British had sent madmen to attack them. Operation Archery was a complete success. The German garrison was destroyed. Prisoners were taken. Churchill personally captured numerous enemy soldiers and earned the Military Cross and Bar for his leadership. After the raid, film footage shows Churchill playing his bagpipes on deck, while the rest of the Commandos danced a Highland fling around him. The footage still exists and remains one of the most surreal pieces of World War II documentary evidence. But Vågsøy was just a warm-up. In July 1943, Churchill was promoted to lieutenant colonel and given command of No. 2 Commando for the Allied invasion of Sicily and Italy. He landed at Catania, Sicily, with his trademark loadout, Scottish broadsword slung around his waist, longbow and arrows around his neck, and bagpipes under his arm. On September 9, 1943, Churchill was ordered to capture a German observation post outside the town of Molina, Italy. The position controlled the pass leading down to the Salerno beachhead. Capturing it was essential for the Allied advance. Most officers would have assembled a full assault force. Churchill took a corporal and infiltrated the town at night. Using stealth and his sword, Churchill and a companion crept through Molina, silently neutralizing German sentries. They found the observation post manned by a mortar crew and multiple infantry squads. Churchill put his sword to the throat of one German sentry and whispered for him to be silent. The terrified German complied. Churchill then ordered the sentry to wake his commanding officer. When the German officer emerged, still half asleep, he found himself facing a British commando holding a medieval sword. Churchill, speaking loudly and clearly in English, ordered the entire German position to surrender. The German officer, either convinced by Churchill's confidence or simply baffled by the situation, complied. Churchill and one corporal marched 42 German prisoners, including a mortar squad, back down the pass to Allied lines. The prisoners carried their own weapons, with firing bolts removed, their ammunition, their mortar, and 5 wounded men on a farm cart. Churchill later described the procession as an image from the Napoleonic Wars. For this action, Churchill was awarded the Distinguished Service Order. But he wasn't done. After delivering the prisoners, Churchill realized he'd lost his sword during a brief hand-to-hand struggle. He walked back to Molina through German-held territory. To retrieve it, He found the sword and returned to Allied lines without incident. In his after-action report, Churchill wrote, "I maintain that, as long as you tell a German loudly and clearly what to do, if you are senior to him, he will cry jaw and get on with it enthusiastically and efficiently whatever the situation." In 1944, Churchill was assigned to the McLean mission in Yugoslavia, supporting Josip Broz Tito's partisans against German occupation forces. In May 1944, he led a raid on the German-held island of Brac with a force of 1,500 partisans, 43 Commando, and 1 troop from 40 Commando. The landing was unopposed, but German gun emplacements made the approach to the objective extremely dangerous. Churchill organized a flanking attack for the following morning. At dawn, Churchill's bagpipes signaled the assault. He personally led 40 Commando up a heavily defended hill, playing "Will Ye No Come Back Again?" On his pipes as German machine guns and mortars tore through formation. Only 6 Commandos reached the German position with Churchill. They fought hand-to-hand until Churchill's ammunition ran out. Then a German grenade landed at Churchill's feet. The explosion knocked him unconscious. When he woke, he was surrounded by German soldiers. Churchill had been captured. The Germans, discovering his surname was Churchill, assumed they captured a relative of Prime Minister Winston Churchill. They flew him to Berlin in chains and paraded him through the streets. German intelligence quickly determined he was not related to Winston Churchill. Disappointed, they sent him to Sachsenhausen concentration camp, specifically to a special section reserved for prominent prisoners of war. Churchill remained in prison for barely a month. In September 1944, he and 4 other British officers escaped through a tunnel they'd secretly dug. The SS immediately ordered his execution, but a Wehrmacht officer named Captain Theuner refused the order, believing it violated military law. Churchill later personally thanked Theuner after the war. The escapees made it to the Baltic coast before being recaptured. Churchill was transferred to a prison camp in Austria. In April 1945, as Allied forces closed in on Germany, the camp guards fled. Churchill simply walked out and made his way through German and Allied lines to Italy, where American forces found him. His first words to the Americans, "Can I fight the Japanese?" Churchill was furious that the war in Europe had ended before he could return to combat. He requested immediate transfer to the Pacific Theater. The British Army sent him to Burma, where he joined forces fighting the Japanese. But before Churchill could see significant action, the United States dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Japan surrendered on August 15, 1945. Churchill was reportedly disappointed. He later said, "If it wasn't for those damn Yanks, we could have kept the war going another 10 years. After the war, Churchill became an instructor at land-air warfare schools in Australia. While there at age 50, he took up surfing and became passionate about the sport. When he returned to Britain, Churchill became the first person to successfully surf the Severn Bore, a tidal wave that travels up the River Severn. The bore can reach 5 feet in height and requires exceptional skill and timing to ride. Jack Churchill, the man who'd fought World War II with sword and bagpipes, was now surfing tidal waves his 50s. In 1952, he appeared in his final film, Ivanhoe, starring Robert Taylor. Churchill played an archer shooting from atop Warwick Castle, putting his championship archery skills on display one more time. Lieutenant Colonel John Malcolm Thorpe Fleming Churchill retired from the British Army in 1959 after 33 years of service, with a break for his adventure years in the 1930s. His decorations included the Distinguished Service Order and Bar, the Military Cross and Bar, and numerous other honors from British and Allied nations. He settled in Surrey, England, and lived quietly, relatively speaking, until his death on March 8, 1996, at age 89. His obituary in one British newspaper stated, "Had Churchill not existed, it would have been impossible to invent him. No fictional hero with a story would seem credible." Mad Jack Churchill's military career defies belief. Consider what he accomplished. Last confirmed Longbow kill in military history, Leponet, 1940. Captured 42 German soldiers with sword, Molina, 1943. Led commando raids while playing bagpipes in the Battle of Vagsoy in 1941. Escaped from a Nazi concentration camp, Sachsenhausen, 1944. walked through German lines to retrieve his sword Molina, 1943, survived multiple explosions, including grenade blast that knocked him unconscious, Brack, 1944, fought in multiple theaters. France, Norway, Sicily, Italy, Yugoslavia. Burma earned the Military Cross and Bar, Distinguished Service Order, and Bar lived to age 89 despite charging machine gun positions with medieval weapons. The question is, how did he survive? Some historians believe Churchill's eccentricity was actually a tactical advantage. The psychological impact of seeing a sword-wielding, bagpipe-playing maniac charging toward you cannot be overstated. German soldiers were trained to fight conventional forces. They expected rifles, grenades, and standard infantry tactics. Churchill gave them a screaming Scotsman. He was English, but played Scottish music and carried a Scottish sword, charging with a weapon from the 14th century. The shock and confusion this created gave Churchill and his men precious seconds of advantage, enough to close distance, seize positions, and capture prisoners before the enemy could react effectively. Churchill himself acknowledged this. When asked why he carried a sword into battle, he replied, "In my experience, if you want to feel confident, you must look confident, and nothing makes you look more confident than carrying a bloody great sword." But there was more to it than psychology. Churchill was genuinely skilled with his weapons. His archery was championship level. His swordsmanship was practiced and effective. His bagpipes were professionally competent. He wasn't playing soldier with medieval weapons. He was using them as effectively as any modern firearm in situations where he deployed them. Mad Jack Churchill represents something fundamental about courage in warfare. He fought on his own terms, refused to be conventional, and led from the front with such absolute commitment that his men followed him into situations that should have been suicidal. And he survived it all. In March 2014, the Royal Norwegian Explorers Club named Jack Churchill one of the finest explorers and adventurers of all time, a fitting tribute to a man who treated World War II as his personal adventure. If this story of the most eccentric warrior in military history moved you, smash that like button right now. Every like helps YouTube's algorithm show these incredible true stories to more people who need to hear them. Subscribe to the American Archive and turn on notifications. We're rescuing untold chapters of military history every single week. Real stories so wild they couldn't be fiction. Drop a comment and tell us, what other Mad Jack stories should we cover? Are there other eccentric warriors from history you want to hear about? Where are you watching from? Thanks for spending this time learning about Lieutenant Colonel Jack Churchill. His courage, his eccentricity, and his absolute refusal to fight World War II like everyone else represent the kind of individualism that makes history unforgettable. Any officer who goes into action without his sword is improperly dressed. Mad Jack proved it. These stories deserve to be remembered. These warriors deserve to be honored.